Hi guys, it's Inventor Andy, and today's tutorial is going to be a brief overview of the language Go, also known as Golang. So I'm going to give you a little bit of the history of it, and then we're going to jump right in and do a quick Hello World example. So Go was developed about 10 years ago by Google. It was developed internally for use on their products, and it came about because a lot of the engineers were unhappy with existing programming languages and how outdated and how kind of idiosyncratic they were. So a lot of languages were developed before the internet was a big thing, and things like network programming, web application programming, that kind of thing, like massive server client applications, weren't easily done, and they were kind of extensions of the initial language. They also felt that some of the object-oriented languages like C++ had become bloated, and kind of the OOP paradigm had been taken too far with sort of interfaces and abstract classes and all that kind of thing. So really they wanted to create a simple language with a readable syntax that was strictly formatted and strictly typed and had all the benefits of low-level languages like C and C++, but the advantages of higher level programming languages like Node.js and that kind of thing, to create kind of what they envisaged as the perfect language. So it's in use on a lot of Google products. It's used in Gmail, it's used in YouTube now, I believe, and it's also the language that Docker was developed in. So it's quite a versatile language. So the only thing it really doesn't do is kind of traditional desktop GUI applications, but that was never a problem that the Google team were trying to solve. There's other languages that work better for that. So I'm going to go ahead and assume that you guys have installed Go and you're ready to get started. So if we load a terminal, and I'm just going to give you a brief overview of the folder structure in Go. So Go has two important paths. You've got your Go root, which is where the binaries are installed, and you've also got your Go path, which is in your home directory, and this contains all of your own projects, any additional libraries that you use, as well as kind of executables that are used in conjunction with Go. So for example, there's an executable that you can use to build Amazon Lambda projects based on a Go file. So these are all stored in your home directory, and if we go to a Go directory within our home directory and do a quick ls, you can see that everything's divided into these three subdirectories. So bin is obviously where our binaries are stored. So this is kind of external tools. It's also when we run a go install command, it will place our own built applications into this bin directory. We also have our package directory, which is where any additional libraries we install are stored. And finally, we've got our source directory, which is where we place our own projects and our own source files. Unless you want to start playing around with adding additional Go paths and having multiple sources for where to store your applications, which can get a little bit complex, it's recommended that you put everything in this source directory. Now, how you organize it within this directory is entirely up to you. You can have subfolders and further subfolders, and you can divide it into projects and subprojects. So if we do a quick ls, you can see that I've got quite a few projects here. Now, we're going to be working from my Inventor Andy directory, so let's quickly go to that. Now, the code editor that I'm using is Visual Studio Code. There are a few others, and obviously it's up to people's personal preference, but as a code editor, Visual Studio Code is absolutely fantastic. It's multi-platform, it's very quick, it's not bloated with unnecessary tools. It's great if you're a software developer and you just want to get down to writing code. There's also a bunch of extensions for Go which help with syntax highlighting and formatting, and making sure that you write the best possible quality code. So if we open up Visual Studio Code, as you can see, I've already created a directory in here called Hello World. So we're going to do a really basic example. This isn't really, I guess, something to be used as a functional example. It's just to demonstrate the simplicity of the language and get you guys up and running. Go files obviously end in the .go extension, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to specify that this is in a main package. So whenever something's in the package main, that means that it will build a binary file from it rather than a library file. I'll go into more detail in other tutorials about creating your own libraries and different package names, but if you're building an executable, always put it in the main package. And like most languages, the main function is obviously main. Now, one of the things that you have to get used to with Go is that they're very strict on formatting. So things like curly braces always have to be on the same line as a statement, whether that's a function declaration or the beginning of a loop or the beginning of an if statement or whatever. Go also has a bunch of packages that are part of the language by default. The one that we're going to be dealing with today is called FMT, and this prints things to the console and takes input and output on a basic level. So, as you can see, when I've typed fmt.println, it's automatically imported that FMT library. That's one of the advantages of Visual Studio Code. I don't know how well other editors do this. If you don't have that feature, it's worth making sure that you import the correct packages. So let's write a quick hello world. And we're going to make this a little bit more interesting. So we're going to ask for your name. So fmt.println. Okay. And you also notice that there's no semicolons at the end of the line. I think rightly so, Google decided that was an unnecessary feature because they're so strict on the formatting. It's not necessary to specify when the end of a code line is. It will find it based on the new line character. So let's declare a string variable called name. The variable name is of type string. You can see that that's highlighted in red because we haven't used it yet. Another thing that Go is really strict on is if you don't use a variable, if a variable is there unnecessary, you have to remove it in order for the application to compile. Don't worry too much about the ins and outs of this next statement. This will be covered in detail at a later date. But what we're going to do now is we're going to scan a line in from the input. So fmt.scan line. And we're going to store that in the name variable that we just created. And then the next part of this is we check if there was an error in our input. So you'll get used to this if error is not equal to nil syntax. Google have massively simplified error checking with Go. So there's none of these kind of nested try-catch statements and 20 different ways to handle an error. You check for an error object, and then if it exists, you handle the error. And it's all handled within one if statement. So you rarely get nesting above 2 or 3 levels. And for now, we're just going to do panic, which is kind of the default method. And that will print out the error to the console and exit the application. And finally, we're going to print our result. So that's it. That's our name printed out on the console. And that is pretty much our application. So one last thing to quickly note is that strings are always encased in double quotes, characters are always encased in single quotes. Again, it's quite strong about the formatting for that, and it won't compile if it doesn't work. So if we load up terminal, and we'll go to that directory, and then we're going to run the command go build. So this will compile it into an executable file. Okay, if we quickly list that out, you can see that we've got a hello world.exe application. And it will always, if you run the go build command, it will always name it after the directory that it's in. So let's give that a quick run. And see, hello world, what is your name? I'll type my name in. And you can see it's printed out the result with my name in. And just so that we can give an example of an error. So I'm just going to press enter where it asks for my name. And you can see that we've got an unexpected new line, so it hasn't found any characters, it's just seen the new line and it's panicked and given us an error. And it also tells you that that error was triggered on line 12 of main.go. So there we go, that's my fairly brief introduction to the language of Go. I plan on doing a lot more tutorials to show you all the weird and wonderful things you can do with it. It's great for client-server applications, it's great for console applications. There's a lot of things you can do with it. Currently I'm writing a lot of microservices using it, which it's very well geared up for. As always, if you've got any questions or comments, please just drop them in the comment box below. I will do my best to answer them, and I'll be back soon with another tutorial on Go. Thanks a lot, guys. Hi guys, it's Inventor Andy here. Thank you for watching my video. If you like the video, please click like, please subscribe to my channel, and please feel free to add any comments if you've got any suggestions for tutorials or videos that I can do. Thanks very much, guys.